Hello and welcome to the Goddess Perspective podcast. This is the podcast where we're talking about spirituality, New Age controversy. We're diving into the shadow realms and discussing all things metaphysical and how you can anchor your metaphysical knowledge into the physical. We're talking reality creation, legacy building, and harnessing your internal power. I'm your host, Magical Mads, and welcome to this month's episode. Hey besties! What's up? Welcome back to the Goddess Perspective podcast. It's been a while since we've done an episode. We took a little bit of a break, but we're coming back full force, and I'm so excited for the topic that we have today. We're going to be talking about remembering the witch within. We're going to be diving into Starseeds, Archetypes, and really embodying your magic, your unique energy signature. And so I want to start off this podcast by sharing what's been alive for me recently. And really what has been alive has been this insistent remembrance of recognizing the Divine Mother in all things. And so I want to give a little breakdown of what I really mean by this. What I mean by this is the Divine Mother is all. It's Kali Ma, it's the goddess, it's the whore, it's the saint, it's the witch, it's the starseed, it's every single thing that you could ever possibly imagine. And I think so often in our society, we're taught to put ourselves in boxes. We're taught to make ourselves smaller. We're taught to confine ourselves to one role. And this is not how the divine goddess, the divine mother, really operates. The divine mother is all. And so the theme that has been coming up for me recently, I've known this concept for a while, but what's been really present for me recently is embracing the aspects of myself that I feel shame around. And not necessarily the ones that are like the ones that you would typically think of when you think of having shame around. For me, it's the parts of myself that are a little judgmental. It's the parts of myself that are truthful and raw and maybe a little aggressive and maybe not very nice. I think a lot of our society conditions us into this good girl mentality. And the good girl is really one archetype, and she's a fun archetype to play in. I'm not saying get rid of the good girl. Although, if your good girl is running your business, you're in for a lot of people pleasing, right? If your good girl is running your relationships, you likely have a lot of resentment underneath the surface. And so what really connecting to the Divine Mother is bringing in this awareness of, oh, I actually do get to be all of these different aspects. Oh, I actually do get to embody all of this, and I don't need to shame myself or make myself feel wrong just because I didn't show up in the perfect way. Because if you're consistently trying to show up in the way that's quote unquote perfect, you'll likely never truly show up as who you actually really are. And those parts of you who don't get to show up are never going to receive the love that they're deeply craving. And this is where things like self-sabotage, things like those times where your like shadow tendencies come out to play, they come out very unexpectedly because you're not giving them the permission to show up in the same way that you're giving the permission to the goddess or the good girl, right? We cannot live in one polarity all the time. We're meant to explore the entire spectrum, and it's not bad or wrong for us to explore the entire spectrum. In fact, this is really what it means to be a witch. This is really what it means to hold the essence of the Divine Mother, of the alchemist, of the warrior, of the priestess, of the rebel, of the healer. All of these different archetypes are ways of allowing us to access and harness this inner dark side, this inner polarity that we oftentimes have a lot of shame around. And so my question that I want to start out with is, what if you didn't need to find your power? What if it wasn't about searching for something outside of you to make you feel okay? What if it was about remembering it for yourself? By allowing yourself to embrace and harness all of these different aspects of yourself. What if you allowed yourself to find yourself, to accept yourself? I noticed recently I was getting really butthurt when people would tell me that I was doing something that they didn't like or that hurt them in some way. And I realized that it was because I was placing too much of my own acceptance onto other people. I was waiting for them to accept me instead of accepting myself and then going into those conversations and having a level-head conversation with them. I was looking for the acceptance instead of actually just accepting myself, accepting all these different parts of me, accepting the different polarities of me, accepting the different star origins of me, accepting all of these different polarities of myself, and actually allowing myself to hold that duality, hold that almost like uncomfortability that comes with holding these different aspects of yourself. So this one is for the witches, the edgewalkers, the ones who felt a fire inside and never quite knew where it came from. And often you probably felt like you had to suppress this fire or to make the fire go away or to make yourself less intense. But what if the key was actually accepting all of it? What if the key was actually utilizing this fire energy to deliberately create your life through polarity? So I want to talk a little bit about the witch as an archetype. This is an archetype that has come up a lot for me in my journey, and a lot of people have witch wounds. And I like to see the opposite side of this as the magician. So you have the polarity of the witch and the magician. And when we have a witch wound, we often have this wound of not being able to accept ourselves. When we have a magician wound, it's often that we have so much magic and we utilize our fire, but we isolate ourselves as a result of not needing anyone. And so when we're talking about building community and building a revolution and building a new way of being, a new way of walking in the world, which I know that if you're listening to this, you crave this deeply, whether or not you want to be the one spearheading it or you want to just be a part of it. When we're talking about building these collective movements, we have to begin to claim both of these parts of ourselves and see the shadow tendencies that they hold and not glamorize them. I think a lot of the time the spiritual community loves to glamorize, oh, I'm a magician, I'm an alchemist, I can alchemize everything. It's so boring to have to alchemize everything all the time, and to do it by yourself, it gets exhausting, right? And you feel isolated and alone. And when you are constantly needing validation and acceptance from other people, or when you are constantly needing the okay to take up space, it's like this draining energy that arises. And so when we're talking about reclaiming these archetypes, we're talking about reclaiming not just the pretty things, not just the things that are like, ooh, I am a wonderful, amazing alchemist, or I can work with the earth and I'm so good at working with the earth. But it's like, it's also required of us to begin to reclaim the power that's in the shadow parts of these aspects as well. And when we can reclaim those shadow parts and really integrate them into our being in a new way through things like parts work, through active embodiment of integrating that cycle, we become a really powerful force that cannot be reckoned with. We begin to dance in the realm of polarity and allow ourselves to actually hold the entirety of the power that's possible for us as we embody these different archetypes. So it's not just about embodying the good things, it's about embodying the shadow aspects as well and utilizing those as learning portals. And this helps us to claim this for our lineage. This helps us to become the embodiment, the walking proof of what it means to be the Divine Mother, what it means to be the witch, what it means to be the oracle, the shadow, the wild mystic, right? All of these aspects are aspects of ourself, and really the Divine Mother is what encompasses all of them. And something that has been coming up for me recently is like, I'm noticing that even when those shadow tendencies come out, it's not a bad thing. It's a time where I can bring in awareness to those tendencies. It's a time where I can allow myself to see myself being vulnerable by showing up in that way and allowing myself to see myself without judging myself. And this is kind of what we go into inside of the Witch's Coven, which I'm so excited to bring to you, to bring Earthside. We've been doing a lot of work behind the scenes to really get this program fine-tuned to the point where it's ready for the public. And a lot of these themes that I've been playing with are a result of working inside of this portal. A lot of these archetypes that I'm sharing with you here are all present in this portal. And inside the portal, we go into how to work with these archetypes, how you can call them into your body and work with them somatically, how you can work with these different shadow aspects and do this parts work. And really, what this does is it gives us the permission to explore these hidden aspects of ourselves, these parts of ourselves that have been dormant. We can activate them and we can utilize their power, not only in the good ways, right, but for the entire spectrums. So inside the Witch's Coven, we explore these energies not just as concepts, but as living patterns that we get to embody. And I'm so excited for you to embark on that journey with us. The other aspect of this that we can touch on is this concept of starseeds. And my personal experience with starseeds is that's how I got initiated into, I'd say, my spiritual pathway. I've always identified with being a witch, but there was a lot of negative connotation to that. And so when right before New Age spirituality really hit and took a big role in the screens, I was uncovering different ways of connecting to my individuality through being a starseed, through connecting with my light language. And this really allowed me to see myself as someone bigger than just this human form, just this human vessel. And it allowed me to explore these more earthly, earth witch energies with a little bit more compassion, with a little bit more of an open mind. And it allowed me to see really that we do come here with the intention to experience these different archetypes for different reasons, and we choose the lessons that we embark on in our lives. And when we can integrate all of these different levels of being, we can pull down from our past lives or other lives that are happening simultaneously and bring through the wisdom. And so this is how I really got into working with archetypes, was through the starseed lens. But it goes so much deeper than that. It becomes this exploration of all of these different parts of yourself, the earthly and the cosmic, the rooted or the ethereal. And I think there's a tendency to want to split between the two, but I see so much value in actually honoring all of them and allowing them to speak to one another and allowing them to integrate with one another. There's this tendency to, when you're, at least from what I see in the New Age spiritual community, is a tendency to work only in the crown area when we're working with starseeds and interdimensional beings. And then the root area is for darker things. And really what I've been on the path of uncovering is how to unite these different aspects and different archetypes of ourselves so that we can bring ourselves into fullness, into oneness, right? And so the key here is you don't have to choose between being cosmic and being grounded. You were always meant to be both. And through these different archetypes, through the different explorations of self, through understanding yourself as a multidimensional cosmic being, we can then build this internal fire within ourselves. And building this internal fire is how we build our passion. It's how we ignite our dreams. It's how we find the wherewithal to pursue the things in this life that we really desire. And that requires this integration of all of these quote unquote past life versions of selves or interdimensional versions of ourselves, so that we can bring that wisdom here and now and feed our internal flame. When you access your internal fire as your source of power and direction and clarity, there's less of a need for this external validation. And this is how these wounded aspects of these different archetypes of ourselves can almost inherently just be, I don't want to use the word fix, but they can be integrated so quickly, because when we are utilizing our internal fire as the source of our power, we recognize that these parts are not separate from us. We recognize that we can pull on these lives or on these interdimensional aspects of ourselves to really fuel us and move us. And this fire, it's really like a metaphor for this internal desire and life force and initiation. And so all of these past life experiences are the initiation into what we are cultivating and culminating in this life. And so the awareness of all of those different aspects combined with utilizing our internal fire can really allow ourselves to stand firm in what it is we are creating when we're building worlds, when we're crafting new communities, when we're on the journey of embarking on a different way of life. We really need to be able to hold that for ourselves. And so these wounded aspects of ourselves can then be integrated through the activation of our internal fire simply by letting ourselves explore ourselves. And then we can go into things like the law of assumption and allowing ourselves to utilize these different laws and workings of the universe to amplify this power that we've already cultivated within. And so then we can utilize the external and the internal as this beautiful foundation building for what we're creating. But when we're constantly seeking towards the outside to give us validation or activation or solidity, a solid source of ourself, we're constantly outsourcing our own power. And this is why it's really important to become aware of the archetypes that you have embodied, that you're meant to embody in this life, that you're called to, that you're drawn to. And then we can weave in these different cosmic laws, like the law of assumption and the law of non-resistance. And this becomes added arsenal to our tool belt to then help us in this reality creation. So I want to ask you here, what would shift at you if you assumed that your magic already works, that you're already the embodiment of the energy that you seek? A lot of the time, especially with the witch wound, we'll often assume that we need protection, or we'll assume that we're not safe. And this goes into childhood conditioning and a variety of other things. It can be from past lives as well. But when we utilize our brain and the universe's laws to our benefit, we can start to assume things and trust that they will come into fruition, instead of relying on needing that practice in order to feel that sense of safety. We create that sense of safety from within by feeding this internal fire, by getting to know ourselves, by uncovering the different lenses of our psyche. And so, what would shift for you if you started doing that now? If you assume that your magic already works, if you assume that you're already the embodiment of the energy that you're seeking. So if you're seeking a sense of stability, what if you assume that you're stable now, here, before you have any of the proof? This is the work of shifting consciously your archetypal structure in your conscious and subconscious mind, in your mind and in your body. And this is the work that we're doing inside of the Witch's Coven, but this is work that you can do. You don't need me to do this. It just takes determination. It just takes consistency. It just takes continual action. And it's really easy to do that when you have the support, which is why we're opening this container. But you can do this without me. You don't need me to do this. And that's really what I want you to get out of the Witch's Coven, is coming in and realizing, wow, all of this power is actually within me. Wow, I can actually really do this. But also, I don't want you to swing to the opposite end of the spectrum, which is that magician wound of, oh, I can do everything myself. I don't need anyone. Because we do need community. We do need people around us. We do need support, right? I was watching a creator on TikTok today, and she was talking about building a village and how it requires you to show up for other people, how it requires you to go out and to experience things. And so when we have these invitations, it's not really like, oh, you need to do this so you can get this result. It's like, no, here's this beautiful invitation that you're likely already leaning towards in your own life. And here's how you can do it with community. Here's how you can begin to integrate this here's how you can begin to integrate this in a way that's really beneficial for you, and also that helps support the community that you're in and that you're joining and that you desire to create. And so throughout this episode, we've touched on how polarity shows up a little bit, but inside the Witch's Coven, we go a bit deeper into this. And so I want to share a little bit of this magic here with you now. Polarity can show up in so many different ways for us. So it can show up in, I was saying, the witch and the magician, but really at the core of this is the masculine and the feminine polarities. And so these show up in magic, in embodiment, in manifestation, in the different parts of ourselves, in our psyche. They show up in our communication. They show up in the ways that we hold ourselves. They show up in the way that in the different archetypes themselves, in the way that we decide to run our business, the way that we decide to show up in relationships. And these different polarities are not bad. Like I said in the beginning, it's about allowing ourselves to explore the different dimensions of ourselves. And a lot of the time, and what I have personally experienced, is an all or nothing kind of situation. So for me, polarity shows up as all in or all out, or it shows up in this like imbalanced energy of over efforting or over surrendering. And this often is a result, again, of childhood conditioning and the world at large conditioning. But really what this is, and what it comes down to, is an imbalance of the masculine and feminine polarity within yourself. And so this is also why working with different archetypes, harnessing your inner witch, harnessing your inner warlock can really bring balance to these qualities. And it shows up in your regular mundane life. It shows up in the way that you go about your daily work. It shows up in the way you create. It shows up in the way that you carry yourself throughout the day. And I notice this a lot, particularly with neurodivergent people. I'm also neurodivergent, and there's a whole entire section on this inside of the Witch's Coven. When we talk about the brain and the body, we begin to do things in ways that are imbalanced in our polarities. And I genuinely feel like neurodivergence is really just a physical manifestation of an imbalance of the internal polarities. Specifically because in my experience, my symptoms or the way that I show up shifts based on the polarities that I'm embodying and how I'm embodying them. And sometimes the path is really just allowing yourself to surrender to that, is allowing yourself to flow through those ebbs and flows, have those more masculine periods of your life, have those more feminine periods of your life. But really the goal is to create a life where you can embody them in a way that's very holistic and grounded and balanced. And so you don't have to have those major fluctuations. You get to live fully in both essences simultaneously. You get to be all of it simultaneously. And this is the Divine Mother again coming through. So I love talking about polarity because it really is the root of everything. And it's like the yin and the yang, right? And even like I said, the mind and the body, that's another polarity, right? I see it as like the feminine is the body, whereas the mind, not like the brain, the mind is more of like masculine energy. And we can see how these different energies show up and play out in our life and begin to follow them and learn lessons through them as different archetypes that are not separate from us, but that are integrated deeply within us. And inside of the Witch's Coven, we are helping students to reclaim all sides of the spectrum, to really allow you to harness your true internal fire, that internal flicker and that internal flame, and keep it at a steady constant to fuel your creations, to allow you to feel more powerful in your creating. I've noticed so many times where I've had an instance of feeling balance, and it's because I'm showing up in a way that doesn't honor both of my polarities. So what happens for me often is, and I used to make myself really wrong for this, and now I've come to accept that it's actually just my inner polarities playing out. But I would work really hard for a long period of time, especially in college. And then I would completely check out. I was like, nope, gotta go. I cannot be bothered right now. You cannot catch me doing anything. And I noticed that in those times where I was working really hard, my feminine was actually really crying for just little pockets of rest, little pockets of relief. And instead of doing that, I overrid her and was like, no, we're just going to keep focusing. And so she rebelled, right? The shadow aspect coming up again. And this is how it all interweaves together. It's such a beautiful dance of the cosmos living within us. But my feminine would come out and she would sabotage my masculine from doing any work for extended periods of time. If she would have gotten the rest that she needed when she asked for it, it would have been fine. But because she didn't, she rebelled and was like, well, you're not going to give me the rest I need? Well, I'm going to take the rest I need. And this would end up in me getting sick or me being super depressed or lethargic or whatever. And I've come to realize, wow, this is just like me not meeting my own needs. And this goes back to heart's work and how we're conditioned to show up. And so all of these different pieces are interwoven inside of the Witch's Coven to give you this full spectrum understanding of yourself through these different modalities so that you can really understand yourself as a multidimensional being and understand that what you're doing and the ways that you're showing up isn't necessarily bad. It's actually just showing you your patterns, your energetic signature. And once you're aware of it, that's where the real magic happens, because that's when you can begin to shift it. And so the Witch's Coven is the foundation for the later courses inside of the Dragon's Den, which is a membership that you can join at any time. And so really this is foundational work for understanding yourself to create a flourishing foundation for your business, for your relationships, for your internal sense of stability to really thrive and be ignited. And really, this entire portal is working with the sacred alchemy of fire, working with the energy of desire and ignition and sacred rage and these darker parts of ourselves that we tend to shun and we tend to want to push away. And so this is really an initiation through the fire. The fire has been lit. The Witch's Coven opens soon. You'll know when it's your time to step inside the circle. Fire medicine has been so powerful for me. It's allowed me to burn through so many limiting beliefs, so many limiting concepts and constructs that I have adapted from living in the society that we live in. And so my intention of this episode and of the Witch's Coven is really to ignite that fire within you, to let you know that it's okay to be who you are and how you are. And better yet, it's okay to want change. It's okay to want to show up more expressive, more bold. It's okay to want to express all parts of you. There is no shame in your expression. There is only liberation. I'm so excited for this new chapter, for what we're building here. Aries season is right around the corner, and I'm so excited to birth this intentionally during this season and imbue some of that astrological wisdom into the magic that we're weaving together. And just an additional side note, the different archetypes when it comes to the moon and the zodiac are so fun to play in as well. There's an entire section on this inside of the Witch's Coven as well. But for you, if you want to start this now, start playing with the ways that you show up in your chart. Start playing with the ways that you show up in your masculine and your feminine. Start playing with the ways that you relate to the moon. Start getting curious about what you feel is your cosmic origin story. Start getting curious about how we got here. Start asking questions and start igniting that inner flame that is within you. All you have to do is ignite it and allow yourself to stoke it with the desires that you already hold in your heart. And it is my hope and wish for you that you do this in love and peace and ease in a way that's really fulfilling for you. Thanks for joining us here today, and I'll see you in the next episode. Thank you so much for joining us on this month's episode. We look forward to connecting with you deeper. Please drop a comment, leave us a review, leave some feedback. Let us know how you received this episode. And as always, our DMs are open. The website is live, and we welcome you into our world as you come alive. Oh, and bestie, make sure you check out the description of this podcast because there's some special links there just for you. Okay, I love you. Bye.